The mess hall that afternoon felt like any other, bright fluorescent lights humming overhead, trays clattering, the low chatter of airmen sharing hurried meals between shifts. But beneath the routine rhythm, something subtle stirred, because the base was hosting dozens of veterans for a commemorative event, and even though most of them preferred to stay out of the spotlight, their quiet presence carried history heavier than any uniform still in service. At a corner table, away from the main crowd, sat an old man with a weathered face and steady hands, tapping a single finger on the table as though remembering a distant beat only he could hear. His coat was simple, not military-issued anymore, the medals long tucked away, and for the young officers buzzing around the room, he blended in like just another visiting elder. Captain Evans, known for his sharp posture and even sharper mouth, strutted through the aisles, his captain's bars catching the light every time he turned his head. Confidence radiated from him in the way young officers sometimes carried themselves, impressive to those below them, irritating to those above, and invisible to the wisdom of those who had given decades of their lives in silence. When Evans noticed the old man sitting alone, he smirked, nudging a lieutenant beside him. "Looks like someone wandered off from the guest tour," he muttered, not caring that the old man could hear. He walked over with the self-assurance of someone who believed rank was the truest measure of authority. "Is this your first time on a base, old-timer?" he asked, amusement dripping from every syllable. A few heads turned, mostly younger airmen who had learned to sense trouble even before it unfolded. The old man didn't react at first. He simply finished his breath, raised his eyes slowly, and looked at Evans not with offense, not with anger, but with a calm patience that only comes from decades of surviving things far harsher than arrogance. Evans continued, crossing his arms. "You really shouldn't be walking around without someone escorting you. These areas are meant for personnel, not visitors who don't know protocol." The room's mood shifted almost imperceptibly. Conversations softened. Chairs stopped scraping. A couple of sergeants exchanged glances, because there was something about the old man's posture, something in the stillness of his hands, that did not feel like helplessness or confusion, but rather the quiet steadiness of someone accustomed to authority, real authority. Still, Evans pushed on, oblivious. "If you're lost, I can call someone to guide you back," he added, clearly proud of himself. But the old man simply smiled, a small, almost nostalgic smile, the kind worn by people who have seen too much to be bothered by the trivial storms of smaller minds. And then he spoke, his voice calm, even gentle, yet layered with a weight that made every nearby ear pucker. "Son," he said, "I was walking these halls before you even learned how to salute." Evans blinked, confused, then scoffed, as if the old man were telling some embellished veteran's tale. "Is that so?" he said. But before he could continue his mockery, a sergeant from the serving counter froze mid-step, color draining from his face as recognition struck. The tray in his hands rattled slightly as he hurried toward them, snapping to full attention with such force that several airmen sitting nearby jumped. "Captain Evans," the sergeant said sharply, "stand down immediately." Evans frowned, annoyed. "What are you?" But the sergeant didn't let him finish. Turning to the old man with unmistakable reverence, he said, "Sir. General Harrison Cole, welcome back." A wave of stunned silence washed over the mess hall. Ford stopped midair, conversations died instantly, chairs halted their movement, and every pair of eyes locked on the elderly figure who had, until a minute ago, been dismissed as an irrelevant old visitor. Captain Evans' face drained of color as the words sank in. "General Harrison Cole." The name echoed through the air like a distant thunderclap. A Medal of Honor recipient. A 4-star general whose decisions had shaped entire missions, whose leadership was studied in academy classrooms, whose service record was legendary even among veterans. The same man Evans had just condescended to. Evans stumbled over his words, the confidence evaporating from his posture. "Sir, I didn't realize I wasn't." But the general slowly rose from his seat, leaning lightly on his cane, his movements deliberate, dignified, carrying a quiet power that made even the highest-ranking officers instinctively straighten their backs. When he looked at Evans, it wasn't with anger. It was with disappointment, and somehow that was worse. "Respect," the general said softly, "is not something you show because someone has rank. You show it because someone is human." Evans swallowed hard, unable to meet the general's eyes. The entire hall remained still, the moment pressing down on everyone like the weight of a long-forgotten truth suddenly remembered. The general continued, his tone still calm but unmistakably firm. "You wear those bars with pride, Captain. That is good. But pride without humility becomes arrogance. And arrogance blinds a soldier faster than any enemy can." He stepped forward, each tap of his cane echoing louder than the ambient noise that had once filled the hall. I commended men who never lived to see the age you are now, he said quietly. Men who would have given anything to sit where you stand, to grow old, to mentor younger officers, to leave behind wisdom instead of bitterness. Evan's breathing trembled. He looked like a man standing under a spotlight he never wanted, unable to escape the truth laid bare before him. The general paused, letting his words settle. Around them, airmen of all ranks listened as though attending a lesson no manual could have taught. You ask me if it's my first time on a base, the general said with a sad smile. Shan. I helped build half the protocols you follow today. A few airmen lowered their heads in embarrassment at the memory of how casually they too had dismissed him when he entered earlier. The general adjusted his coat and looked around the room, his gaze passing over young soldiers, seasoned NCOs, and veteran officers alike. And then he delivered the quiet truth that would linger in the hall long after he left. The uniform doesn't make you worthy, he said. Your character does. Then, with a dignified nod to the sergeant, General Harrison Cole began walking toward the exit, leaving behind a silence that was heavy, reflective, and humbling. Airmen instinctively moved aside, clearing a respectful path as though honoring a procession. Only when he reached the doorway did people finally breathe again. Evans remained frozen, staring at the floor, the weight of the lesson settling in his chest like a stone. No one mocked him. No one pitied him. They simply watched, understanding that what had happened was more than just a reprimand. It was wisdom passed down, a reminder of what true leadership looked like. A reminder that respect is earned through kindness, humility, and the quiet strength of character, not rank on your sleeves. And for the rest of that day, the mess hall felt different, quieter, more thoughtful, as if everyone there had witnessed not just an incident, but a moment that would change the way they carried themselves for years to come.